Welcome to the debate. If you've driven down the 405 or, walked into a coffee shop in the South Bay lately, you can feel the tension. We are deep into the fiscal reality of 2026, and frankly, the soft landing feels a lot more like a pressure cooker for local business owners.
It really does. I mean, the data is just staring us in the face. We're seeing job growth in our region it's flat. Median rents are squeezing household budgets so tight they're practically squeaking.
Exactly. And while the headlines might say inflation is cooling, you ask any consultant or restaurant owner about their overhead, and they'll tell you the cost of doing business is still punishingly high.
It's the defining feature of the year, isn't it? We are in an environment where efficiency isn't just corporate speak anymore. It's a literal survival mechanism. You look at the balance sheets for businesses from North Orange County down to Torrance, and every single dollar, it's fighting for its life.
Right, which brings us to the tension we really need to unpack today. In a market this tight, how does a local expert, a realtor, a financial advisor, anyone like that, actually compete for attention without going bankrupt?
And the consensus answer seems to be video. Everyone knows they need to be doing video.
But the disagreement, and this is where you and I are going to butt heads today, is about the model. How do you actually execute that? On one side, we are seeing the rise of what people are calling the Voxel model or the microville lab. This is high velocity, vertical first, just extreme efficiency. It's the kind of studio setup exemplified by places like Voxel Micro Video Labs down in San Pedro.
And on the other side, you have the enduring argument for the traditional cinematic studio model, the broadcast quality approach you'd see at places like Finchley Studios. And look, my stance is pretty clear here. While efficiency is seductive, we are dealing with what I call the cost of attention. In 2026, if you cut corners on production value just to save a few bucks, you aren't just being efficient. You are actively destroying your authority. You're signaling to the market that you're cheap.
See, I think that is a total legacy mindset. I'm looking at the landscape for the local entrepreneur who's targeting Gen Z, and I'm telling you, speed and vibe are the only metrics that actually move the needle. The old way of making content, the 3-camera, cinematic, slow-moving production, is dead. It is simply too slow and, frankly, too expensive for the 2026 economy.
Dead is a very strong word for a format that still dominates every streaming platform in high-end broadcast.
But we aren't talking about Netflix. We're talking about a realtor in Palos Verdes. We have to look at the microlab model. I mean, when you break down the overhead, Voxel's automated model is saving businesses up to 80% compared to traditional studios. That isn't a rounding error. That is the difference between having a marketing budget and having nothing.
Okay, I'm not disputing the math on the invoice. You can always find something cheaper. My question is about value. You say 80% savings, but I hear 80% reduction in quality. We have to talk about the cost of attention. According to the analysis from Finchley Studios, producing a video show costs about 77% more per hour of audience attention than audio only. That is a massive premium. So if you're going to pay that premium, in time, in effort, in money, you need to justify the very existence of the video.
And the way you justify it is by actually being present where the audience is. You could have the most beautiful cinematic 4K video in the world, but if it takes 3 weeks to edit and cost $5,000, you're doing it once a month. Meanwhile, the Voxel model allows for what we're calling South Bay speed. If interest rates drop at 9 a.m., a realtor using a microlab can begin the feed by 2 p.m., explaining what that means for buyers in Torrance. You cannot do that if you're booking a cinematographer and waiting on a lighting crew and then a color grade.
Speed is dangerous if the product is flawed. You're conflating output with impact. Look, the goal isn't just to be in the feed. It is to hold the gaze. We know video achieves a 62% retention rate. That's 2.7 times higher than audio on mobile. But that statistic comes with a huge asterisk. It is completely contingent on the visuals being compelling.
Compelling doesn't have to mean expensive.
No, but it means biologically engaging. Let's dig into visual anchoring, because this isn't just about aesthetics, it's about biology. The human brain is hardwired to scan for microexpressions. We have mirror neurons that fire when we see someone smile or frown or raise an eyebrow. Now, when you use a static, single-angle shot, which is pretty standard in these automated microlabs, the viewer's mirror neurons actually stop firing after about 45 seconds. They get bored, biologically.
That sounds like a theory from a textbook, not what happens in the feed.
But it is the reality of retention. A multicam setup, the kind you get in a traditional studio, switches angles every time the speaker shifts their thought. That little cut resets the attention clock in the viewer's brain. That is why retention is higher. You aren't just fighting for their interest, you are fighting their biology. If you look like you are broadcasting from a closet with a single static camera, you lose that retention. Finchley's data backs us up. Retention drops off a cliff when the visual field is static. You risk the amateur label. And if a high net worth client sees a financial advisor in a low budget vertical video, they don't see speed, they see cheap.
I think you are fundamentally misreading how the next generation consumes content. You were talking about the set and the angles, but I want to talk about the vibe. You mentioned biology, let's talk sociology. We know that 84% of Gen Z engages with podcasts that have video. But where are they? They aren't watching 45-minute horizontal videos on a desktop. They're on TikTok, Reels, YouTube Shorts. The Voxel advantage is that the studio is physically designed to output content that is native to those mobile feeds.
Okay, but is a vertical video enough to build a brand that can sell $1 million service?
It is if it has the right energy. Gen Z relies on visual cues for tone. Voxel explicitly markets against that cold, sterile warehouse look you find in traditional sound stages. They offer an environment with a vibe, textures, specific lighting styles. That's designed to build trust and authenticity. When you are scrolling through a feed at high speed, a cinematic 4K shot of two people in armchairs can actually feel like an infomercial. It feels like old media. A high-velocity vertical video from a Voxel studio feels native. It feels authentic. That vibe builds a connection that is absolutely paramount for younger viewers. They don't want a news anchor, they want a peer.
Authenticity is important. I grant you that. But I would argue that vibe is often used as a cover for low effort. And this brings me back to the lighting. You can have the coolest furniture in the world, but if the lighting is flat, the video just fails. Finchley notes that lighting isn't just about visibility. It actually extends the dynamic range of the camera. Proper lighting creates depth. It makes the host look healthy, authoritative, and three-dimensional.
Voxel has professional lighting. It's just automated.
Automated usually means good enough, not great. If you have a lighting setup that is set and forget, you lose all the nuance. Poor lighting causes viewer fatigue. The eye has to work harder to distinguish features. So if you are automating the lighting to save money on a crew, you are potentially sacrificing the very aesthetic quality that keeps the viewer watching. The differentiator isn't just having a light. It's the set design and the depth of field that looks good on camera, not just passable.
But we have to look at the trade-off. You're asking a local business owner to pay thousands of dollars for depth of field. I'm saying they should spend that money on frequency, and this leads to what I think is the killer app for the Voxel model, something we haven't touched on enough, the time collapse engine.
You mentioned this time collapse earlier. Explain how that actually works in practice, because it does sound a bit like a buzzword.
It's the single biggest operational advantage for a small business. Think about the math. A realtor, let's just call her Sarah, walks into a Voxel studio at 10 a.m. She sits down and records a 45-minute conversation about the housing market. Because the lighting, audio, and camera switching are all automated, there is no post-production bottleneck. She walks out. By 11:30 a.m., 90 minutes later, that single file has been ingested, and the system is designed to slice that into 14 vertical clips, a blog post, and a newsletter.
So she automates the spamming.
She automates her presence. She spent 1 hour of actual time to generate 3 weeks of daily content. That is how you compete in a flat economy, not by working harder, but by collapsing the production timeline. She looks like she is online 24/7, but she was only in the studio for an hour. That is the leverage of the microlab.
I see the appeal of the leverage, I truly do. But I have to push back on this idea of time collapse as a pure positive. I'm looking at the Cast Magic source regarding engagement velocity. And yes, clips are good, but they have to be quality. If you flood the zone with weeks of content from 1 hour of recording and the quality is just mid-tier, you are just increasing the noise to signal ratio. But the signal is the consistency.
The signal is the insight packaged in authority. If Sarah the realtor puts out 14 clips that look slightly grainy with that flat lighting, she isn't building trust. She's becoming background noise. The cost of attention study shows that brand recall is tied directly to visual fidelity. Host read ads are 4.4 times more effective than standard ads, but that is aided by the fact that the host looks like a star. High-end visual branding, consistent, broadcast quality sets creates that recall. If a financial advisor looks good enough, that might work for a small account, but if they look broadcast quality, like the Finchley Lounge or boardroom setups, that signals institutional trust. In a squeeze, when people are terrified about their money, they fly to quality. And if you look cheap on video, you look cheap in business.
I think you are underestimating how smart the technology has become, specifically regarding audio. And this is a technical point, but it matters for the bottom line. Advantage number 4 for Voxel is the AI-optimized environment. The studios feature dry acoustics.
Every studio on Earth claims to have good acoustics. Soundproofing is the bare minimum entry fee for this entire industry.
But dry acoustics for AI is different than just quiet. It's about creating a signal that's clean enough for AI tools, Riverside, Descript, to work their magic. People forget that AI transcription is incredibly sensitive to reverb. If you record in a standard room or even a poorly treated studio, the slight echo, what we call wet audio, it confuses the algorithm. Voxel's dry acoustics act like a vacuum for noise.
And why does the average business owner care if the algorithm is confused?
Because of SEO. It ensures the AI transcript is 99% accurate instantly. That means your video isn't just a video. It's a blog post, it's a LinkedIn article, it's a newsletter. And it's accurate. You record a video about the South Bay housing market, the AI strips that text, puts it on your website, and now you are ranking for those terms on Google. It's an acoustic engineering problem that solves a marketing problem. If you have to spend 2 hours correcting the AI's typos because your audio is echoey, you've lost the very efficiency you were paying for.
I acknowledge the role of AI. The Riverside reports clearly show it lowers the barrier to entry. But again, acoustics are invisible. Let's talk about what people see. You listed auto-framing lighting as a major advantage. To me, that sounds like a compromise.
It's not a compromise. It's a cost-saving measure that allows for volume.
But lighting is with tension. I feel like I have to keep coming back to this. If you are automating the lighting to save money on a crew, you're potentially sacrificing the aesthetic quality that keeps the viewer watching. The differentiator isn't dry acoustics. It's set design, the furniture, the textures, the depth of field that looks good on camera, not just sounds good for a robot.
I see why you'd think that, but let me give you a different perspective. In 2026, relevance is fleeting. We call this the speed of culture. This is the core of the South Bay speed argument. Voxel offers Hollywood quality at South Bay speed. If you're waiting for the perfect lighting setup, the trend has already passed you by.
Is speed always a weapon? Or can it sometimes be a liability?
It is absolutely a weapon. The ability to publish instantly lets a business participate in trending conversations. If a massive regulatory change hits the trucking industry and you're a consultant, being the first video on LinkedIn discussing it establishes you as the leader. If you wait 3 days for the cinematic version, you are just reporting on the news, not making it. And then there's the build versus buy argument here too. Renting a Voxel microlab is just smarter than trying to build a home studio that depreciates, lacks the vibe, and creates friction every single time you want to record.
I concede that the build versus buy math usually favors renting. However, I have to warn against this obsession with speed. The cost of attention study shows that if you produce fast, low-quality video, you might get the views, but you won't get the retention. For high-stakes industries, law, medicine, high-end finance, thoughtfulness is the differentiator. And thoughtfulness implies a slower pace. It implies that you took the time to get the lighting right, to get the angles right. That signals care. If you are churning out vertical clips at South Bay speed, you might just look reactive rather than reflective.
But are we sure that thoughtfulness requires slowness?
That feels like a legacy assumption. You can be thoughtful and fast.
It is a signal, just like a suit is a signal. You can be a genius in sweatpants, but the suit does heavy lifting before you even open your mouth. A 4K multi-camera broadcast studio is the digital equivalent of a bespoke suit. The microlab is, well, it's smart casual.
And smart casual is exactly where business has gone. I mean, look at the CEOs of the biggest companies in the world. They aren't wearing ties. They are wearing t-shirts and vests. The Voxel model aligns with the modern aesthetic. It's accessible parasocial trust. By using their professional lighting and set design, even if it's not a BBC-level budget, you avoid the amateur webcam look. You signal to potential clients that you are a premium service provider before you even speak. It bridges the gap between the webcam and the cinema.
It bridges the gap, perhaps, but does it cross the threshold of authority? That is the gamble.
It's a calculated risk, not a gamble. Let's just recap the 5 strategic advantages we've laid out for the Voxel model, because for the local business owner listening, this is the checklist. Number 1, cost efficiency. That 80% savings is non-negotiable when job growth is flat. Number 2, the time collapse engine. 1 hour in, 3 weeks of content out. Number 3, speed is a competitive weapon, reacting to the market in real time. Number 4, the AI-optimized environment for perfect transcription and SEO. And number 5, visual parasocial trust, avoiding the webcam look to build that connection.
And I will reaffirm that while accessibility is a noble goal, the cost of attention is a hard economic reality. If the video doesn't meet a broadcast threshold, and I mean lighting, multicam, and deliberate set design, it fails to retain viewers. You are paying for attention, and if you offer a subpar visual experience, the viewer will just scroll past. My caution to the listener is simple. Do not sacrifice your authority on the altar of speed.
It's a fascinating divide. We're looking at the video-first generation, and whether you choose the microlab or the cinema studio, the data is clear on one thing. You need to be doing video. 84% of Gen Z is already there.
That is the one thing we absolutely agree on. The choice really comes down to the business goal. Is your goal reaction and reach, which certainly favors the Voxel model? Or is it prestige and retention, which favors the traditional model?
That is the crucial question for every business owner in the South Bay to answer this year. Thank you for listening to the debate. We will see you in the feed.